Everybody's back together. We're here once again for the BWI Live Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. If you're watching here on the YouTube channel, below me is Sean Fitz, publisher of Blue White Illustrated. The man adjusting his somewhat wavy locks on the other side of the top of the screen is Nate Bauer, senior editor for Blue White Illustrated. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Nate, you're dissatisfied with my intro there?
No, it's not your fault. I did a little bike ride. You know, I'm exercising. It's good. It doesn't happen for me some days. And so I did that, but I expected my hair to dry, and it here we are, and it's not, and it looks pretty ridiculous. Also, I'm sweating profusely. So all the images that draw in the viewers right in this box right here.
Absolutely. Fitz back from fishing. Fitz, how did fishing go? Tell us your. I'm not good at fishing stories, so what's the tall tale of this week?
Oh man, fishing was great. It's more about the experience than the fish. Although I caught the biggest trout I've ever caught, so I'm pretty happy about that as well. So it was just a great weekend to get away, and I got back this week, or I got back yesterday and caught up on the recruiting info on the site. Ryan Snyder did a wonderful job with Inside Lash. There's notebooks. There's a bunch of stuff. You have not stopped writing about wide receivers. I see that.
Nope.
So we appreciate that, as people want to read about Penn State wide receivers. So
yeah.
No, it's good to be back. I'm honestly a little shocked we got Nate this week. It is Masters Week. So like the fact that you're here is pretty amazing. I know you're not going, but you know, it's still a sanctimonious holiday in your neck of the woods. So good to see your smiling, rosy red face.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate way to describe that. Nate, we also have our weather forecast here in the chat. Snowed in western Pennsylvania today. Snowed in April. Yes, it is currently snowing here in Happy Valley in April. So practice coming up tonight. I would expect us to be inside Haluba Hall. We're going to preview all of that in just a little bit. But of course, I want to let you know about something here to start the show. We've been doing something over the last 3 weeks or so that I'm very excited, and it's a thank you and an apology all at the same time. We should have been giving away subscriptions to the BlueWhiteIllustrated.com the entire time we've been here as a part of the YouTube channel. We ask you guys to do a lot of stuff. Well, we just ask you to do a bunch of free stuff, but like the video, subscribe consistently. We're asking you to do something, and I wanted to give back to you and say thank you. So for new subscribers here, anyone who subscribes between now and the blue-white game, you're going to be entered automatically for free to earn a subscription to the site. That's 5 people are going to win a subscription to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to get all that stuff that Fitz just talked about, recruiting information, articles, content, film breakdowns, all that stuff. All you got to do is subscribe. And listen, and to our podcast listeners as well. I am a podcast listener. I watch a lot of YouTube, but mostly when I'm listening to shows like this, I'm on a podcast. One of the things you can do to help us there, if you wouldn't mind, is interact with it. Leave a message. 5-star reviews are always super helpful on that side of things as well. And I know we're always trying to grow this YouTube channel, but really, like, the backbone of all this is you watching and listening, regardless of where you are in the world. So, stump speech is over. Let's get into the latest Penn State football news and information right now coming out of the program. And Nate, I'm going to start with you because from a tidbit perspective, I really enjoyed reading your breakdown of kind of the special teams. Everyone's always asking about special teams. Punt return has been almost non-existent for a while now at Penn State, and you have an early leader in the clubhouse to take that job, it seems. Tell us a little more about that.
I love it that you're giving me credit for this because I'm pretty sure Fitz wrote it first. But
let me phrase as to why. You had both punt return and Devonte Ross in your headline. So
that's true.
That's why we're starting with you.
Yeah. So the kid from Troy, and he returns punts, and you see that it's on film. He did it successfully against Iowa, and so that turned some heads. And now Justin Lustig is optimistic that he can be a guy who might be able to shake things up there a little bit, right? I think that we've talked about this previously, but it bears repeating. Of all the areas of available growth for this team, for this program from last season to this season, it's in special teams, right? And it's not to say that special teams were some kind of abject failure or shortcoming last year. It's not, but they were fine. They were okay, right? And the difference making that you can get with a spark plug, specifically at kick and punt return, it changes things. That doesn't mean you can count on it. It doesn't mean it's, like first thing you got to do is catch the ball, right? You can't make critical mistakes. Those things have to happen first. But if you have a guy back there who scares teams, I mean, even remember going back to KJ Hamler in 2019. I remember in the lead up to the Cotton Bowl, the Memphis game, they were talking about how that's worth 10 yards, right? Of a punter making mistakes,
right?
There are just field position things that you can gain by having a guy back there who does things like that. So look, I am a firm believer. I think that you guys agree that winning happens in the margins at the highest levels. And so if you want to look at a margin, that's one that Devonte Ross might be able to have an impact on.
Fitz, it's called hidden yardage for a reason. It's hard to see. It's hard to quantify. It is quantifiable in a certain aspect, but what is in your opinion the impact of finding a punt returner that doesn't just do the smart thing of not catching the ball inside the 5 and not fumbling, not dropping the ball on the ground? What are the tangible benefits of that? And how, I know you are our special teams expert here. What is the progress of the emphasis they place on it in the program and the work they've done so far to actually get to that point?
Yeah, I think people hate it, but Nate nailed it. Is the first thing is catching the football. Like it is a tough thing to do. Like it's one of those things that we watch on TV, we kind of take for granted in just terms of securing the football. It's tough to do, number one. That said, it's part of the description of the job description. So they need to be able to do that. And that comes with the expectations. But you got to have that judgment. I mean, you just said it. Fair catching inside what was it? Zion Tracy fair caught one on the 2 in the Orange Bowl. That's not ideal. So you've got to be aware, situational awareness is huge in this one. It's very different than it used to be. It used to be put your heels on the 10, and if the ball's going over you, you let it go. These punters have gotten so good that has moved back to the 5. That is a situation where if that ball bounces over your head at the 10-yard line, it's probably going to sit at the 2 or the 1 or something like that. So things have changed. The math has changed because special teams is so much more precise than it used to be. It used to be just go out there and kick the ball as far as you can and see if you can get that covered or see how long it rolls or something like that. Now there's a bunch more strategy involved in it. So catching the football, being aware of your surroundings, you would rather be too safe at times. And that's the thing. You see these guys, they fair catch and there's a guy 7 yards away and then they slap the ball and they're all mad because they messed up. But it's also, it's a heady play to make that fair catch because you don't put yourself at risk. And really what you're talking about with an offense that you hope has some fireworks, you hope has the ability to move the football, is putting them in the best position possible. So can you make that transition from team that catches the ball, which what Penn State was last year? I don't think they had the dynamic return aspect on this roster last year. Now you can grow into that. I think Zion Tracy can grow into that, but you can also go out and recruit that, which is what they did with Devonte Ross, who was a more quick than fast guy, which you want back there as a punt returner. It's very interesting because I look back 2 years and obviously Daquan Hardy was the right move, right? Obviously. He kind of broke us with 2 returns against a bad UMass team. Like Daquan Hardy was very good. Don't get me wrong. But the expectation of he's this much better than Caden Saunders came from those 2 returns. And the rest of the time he was good. He was good. Saunders, I'm not sure has the sort of the snap that you need back there, but he's still going to be back there catching it. You got Tysier Denmark back there who has the ability to do that as well. So it's a different skill set. It's not the fastest, kick return sometimes just forge right ahead and go for it.
Straight line speed, break some tackles.
Yeah, punt return is so much more cerebral, difficult, and
make a guy miss in a phone booth. Kind of, the difference of short area quickness, short area elusiveness, and the ability to stop and start, as opposed to, are you a runaway freight train? Is kind of how and you take those from different positions, right? And it has been interesting, Fitz, that Penn State's had players that have the technical definition of the skills necessary for this job for a while now. I mean, it's not like they're a talent that has they're a team that has no talent at corner or receiver, And yet it has been kind of a frustration of trying to find a guy who can do the job as opposed to just technically he's able to do the job.
Right.
Do you see any correlation in terms of like the growth there to progress at certain positions? I'm not trying to dig too far into this, but it just seems like it's interesting that we're having a different conversation about it this year than we have previously. And it feels like that there's, something has changed.
Not really with the positions, more so as the individuals, like the individual skill set. Like last year, I said all last year that King Mack would have been that guy. Like I think he had the ability in the short term, the short area quickness and the things like that to make it happen. He did it at the high school level, did it very well. And I think when he gets back to full form, he'll be in the mix as well. But it's just it's a body type. It's an athlete type. It is an experience thing. You rarely see freshmen, young guys back there returning punts. You can see them returning kicks. And what Penn State used to like to do is take that third running back and put him back for a kickoff. So do you see a Quentin Martin? Do you see a Corey Smith or something like that this year? I think you probably to maybe work its way out with the reps and things like that with Singleton and Allen, that maybe you go in that direction because you are so deep there. So I think that it's more about how you can maximize, number one, maximize the play, and number two, just maximize your roster, keep guys engaged, keep guys that have the ability to do so. Like that's the thing. I say keep guys engaged, and you think you're just going to throw somebody out there to keep them out of the portal, but Quentin Martin has the ability to return kicks. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So you go with that, and then you kind of find out in the long run whether or not that's the way to go. I think the important thing here is that Penn State has options, and I don't think they had as many options last year.
So the next thing I want to get to here in terms of the latest Penn State football news comes from off the field, and the spring transfer portal window is about to open. That's correct, right? The 16th, Nate, is it? I think it's April 16th. Recently, Happy Valley United has announced their spring portal and retention fund, otherwise known as Retain the Roar. Retain the Roar. Nate, I just want to get your early impression of a couple of different things here. We talked about this last year in a little bit of detail in terms of how it was presented, how it was rolled out, and the result of those efforts. Do you see anything different this year, like year one to year two, in terms of comparative improvement or in terms of response to this Retain the Roar campaign?
Yeah, I don't really remember the details of last year's campaign. I thought, and I said that I thought that they needed one in December last year, right? I thought that was one that Michigan had success with previously, as kind of a like for that first window, that winter window, which typically, and I think Fitz, you can attest to this, typically is more fruitful, right? That Penn State has had more success in that window than they have in the spring. However, as you see from that graphic, guys, Hunter Norzad, obviously Chop Robinson, like there are players who have been excellent for Penn State who have come in during the spring window. I think people got a little bit confused because they they saw the graphic and they saw AJ Harris there and thought, what is this, like a hostage, right? Well,
because it's also called Retain the Roar, so it makes you think retain players, and then you got current players on there, but it's also there's a little mixed messaging because it is spring portal and retention fund.
Yeah,
so I get it's a little bit mixed because I was in the same way. I felt the same way about that.
It that wasn't the intention. Obviously, right. The intention was to say, hey, look, these are guys who came in specifically during this window. They can't. Happy Valley United can't make a graphic that is the picture of a darkened out silhouette and say, buy a receiver in the portal. That's not
what they don't want to use my graphic. Oh,
yeah. Is that a receiver?
I don't want to say. There's a reason it's a blacked out image because it's supposed to be ambiguous.
Yeah,
and yes, it is. It's absolutely a receiver.
Yeah. So they look. Penn State needs a receiver. It's fair. I do think that some of the response to it is interesting because, look, I'm never going to tell people what to do with their money. None of us here contribute to NIL, nor should we. That is not our job. Yeah. We are objective journalists. However, for Penn State fans, I think that I saw some of the immediate responses to this as kind of complaints. Look, like Penn State fans are getting hit up from every direction, right? There's the stadium. That ticket prices eventually are going to go up. They're not actually right now, which is an important fact. But I understand the fatigue. What I don't understand, though, is this program, in terms of fan response, needs momentum. It only takes a couple of people to drop that ink in the button or in the bucket for it to permeate and kind of sour other people with those initial messages. And so I think that Penn State has had a wonderful, excellent response from a lot of well-to-do, right? Like kind of heavy hitters. They've done okay with big donations. They've done well with big donations. But in terms of the crowdsourcing and trying to get more people involved in, those lower level $25, $50 donations, I think that the negative comments hurt, honestly. I don't think that helps anything. And I do think that there is an opportunity that people don't recognize of people look at these campaigns and say, oh, there's no way that Penn State is going to come up with $1 million from its fan base of small dollar donations. No, you're right. Penn State isn't going to come up with $1 million. But if they can generate $25,000 to $50,000 off of this spring portal campaign or retention campaign, that helps Penn State.
Yeah,
it does. That they use that money. There are no dollars that Penn State football is going to refuse when it comes to its allocation of money.
Winning in the margins, and there's in a $1 million program, in a $200 million program, the margins of $50,000. Those are some of the areas in which you can gain an advantage. But Fitz, I think this is an important thing to then respond to that of, if you donate, it doesn't mean they're getting a receiver in the portal necessarily, because you can't guarantee those things. And you've done great work of examining portal, especially receivers, and the impact they've had on other programs, even if they didn't come to Penn State. So how do you view this particular push and the opportunity ahead of Penn State from the football's perspective of actually executing something that fans would be excited about, like that money going into directly an opportunity to bring in a player that can help them win a national championship?
Yeah, I think that's part of the sale job, right? Is the psychological aspect of, hey, if they get another receiver, they're going to be a better football team. And we've seen the numbers. That's not necessarily always the case, but you're playing the percentages where, hey, we're going to bring in somebody from the outside that we think is capable of lifting this unit, and maybe it lifts this unit, and you could be a part of that. And I think that makes sense. And again, there's a lot of probably more hand wringing than there should be on the receiving aspect of it, because you look at this roster and it's not just about one guy changing the entire outlook for 2025, because they're still looking, you're looking at defensive line, you're looking at solidifying positions where you have, you feel good about your talent, but to get to a championship level, you need more of it. That's the thing. Yeah. You just keep piling it on. And until this House settlement that we're going to probably get into here in a minute, comes through and there's distinct guidelines for how it works, you're just kind of throwing it at it right now. So I think that's where you go out with it, and you feel that you were contributing. As Nate said, a lot of this is going to come from heavy hitters, but Penn State's not going to turn down anything. And that's, I thought we were close to getting past this, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that much further beyond the GoFundMe aspect of what we're looking at for the entire thing. And that's, I think that's for everything, really. You look at the stadium, you look at the NIL, and they're all different buckets, but at the same time, Penn State to continue to grow as a program is open to all this kind of stuff. And I think they've done a much better job with it. I mean, there's still work to do on the message. And I know Penn State fans don't particularly care for it. I know a lot of fan bases don't particularly care for it. And I'm right there with Nate. I don't blame them for that. But the messaging has improved over the last couple of years. And I think it's put them in a much better situation to sort of be educated on the matter and sort of understand how all this stuff works. So I'm encouraged by the strides that they've made, but it's still a long road. Yeah,
I think there's a couple of things at play here. Just kind of thinking about what you just said. First off, unlike the NFL or sports leagues in general, these programs are not backed by billion-dollar owners. Now, they have donors, sure, but owner and donor are very different things. Secondly, there are more teams splitting the pie in terms of TV revenue. There's 32 NFL teams. That is tightly controlled because that leads to more distribution of wealth between smaller groups of people to create the salary cap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The business model is a little tighter in the NFL. That's all. So there's these things on this level that are both traditional in terms of fundraising and, structural that are a part of this conversation. So it's just, again, college football is one of the most unique things in America from a business and execution standpoint of what is a wildly profitable business for so many people involved. And it just seems like it's still a little bit haphazard at times. But we're going to pivot off of that meandering thought into something a little more concrete. Beer. Fitz, did you take any Antifragile with you on your trip this weekend?
Unfortunately not. No, they did not have cans available when I was in the US. So we set up and we fell flat on that pitch. But the next time they have cans, I will be getting cans, and definitely love the job they do at Antifragile. These are the best beer in State College, as we've told you multiple times. The cheesesteaks are back, as we told you last week, and it has been a sort of a godsend for some people downtown. I saw the lines out the door for those cheesesteaks, so we're really, really happy that they're back in business, because they are fantastic, fantastic accompaniments to the beer, the kombucha, the mixed drinks, and the atmosphere, which we love the most about Antifragile. So excited to get back there, excited to be warm and sit on their porch again. It's not going to happen today, but I feel like soon it's going to happen. Blue-white weekend, I'm sure, will be swarming with Penn State fans like you guys that are listening and watching on the YouTube show. I know that they appreciate the Penn State fans and the how do you say, clientele of a certain age. It's a little bit older, but we'll take they'll take that sort of clientele all day. So we appreciate you guys dropping in, telling him that the Blue White Illustrated podcast sent you. Nate's probably going to be sitting at the bar post round of golf or something like that. Hey, it's a great spot to be.
I'm not old. Stop it.
You're older than me. Doesn't look it, but
well, I feel old, so I'm with you guys. Appreciate Antifragile as always, and there's some great stuff coming up this summer we'll be telling you about. Practice coming up tonight. I do want to talk about some football things. We talked about punt return, but people love actual football and talking about the things on the football field. And I've really appreciated the fact that we've gotten an extended view of practice the last 2 weeks in terms of the number of drills we see, the quality of the things that we've seen, and what that can reveal about the team so far this spring. I think we have a better idea of what's going on at practice, at least on Tuesdays. So I'm always interested to get more schematic clues, get more personnel clues coming up tonight. Fitz, what are you interested in? Where's your mind at heading into week 3 of spring football, and what you're looking forward to maybe solidifying in your own mind?
It's going to, we're going to be inside Haluba again. So it's going to be a different look at things. Saw some cool stuff last week with some one-on-ones. And then, you kind of start to see maybe some separation at some certain spots. You want to see separation, a wide out. I think that's what everybody's talking about. But some of the other stuff that you're looking at, maybe we get some one-on-ones with the O-line and D-line this week. Maybe we get some younger guys stepped up and thrown in the fire. We saw a bunch of Kobe Howard last week. We saw some promising things from Matthew Otten. And in this situation that they're in, as we continue, God, I fell right back into receivers. I didn't even try it this time. But your mind just goes to where the people want your mind to go. And that's that receiver battles right there. And we saw last week, battling with the likes of AJ Harris. Davian Collins was fantastic last week when we were there, but you just get to see the competition level. And that's really what I keep going back to with this group is you can go through drills and you can look fantastic in drills and you can be smooth and in and out of your breaks and things like that. But if they put you up against Davian Collins, who's going to be physical and he's going to chirp your ear off, and that's putting it very nicely compared to what we saw last week. That is to me the litmus test on how you're going to go out there and compete. And we hear James Franklin talk about a guy like Tyseer Denmark, a guy that's showcasing the toughness, and that's part of it. It's not about going out and running a 10-yard out. It's about the guys in your face. You have to get around him and still get to the spot that you need to get, because the timing is so precise in the college game, or just in any level of this game. That's really what matters. So I'm really love watching those one-on-ones. I know I'm on the defensive field most of the time, but when we're in Haluba, everything's just right on top of each other. So getting to see those guys go at it is pretty great. I'm encouraged, and I hope we see more of that this evening.
Nate, what are you interested in learning?
Honestly, if I can just piggyback on that idea somewhat, it's curious to me that for all of the things that James Franklin talks about, setting the tone, right? They do those one-on-one periods really early in practice. And in the past, I mean, really throughout his tenure at Penn State, he has closed those off too, right? He kicks reporters out. That's counterintuitive to me. That actually seems like the one period that he should have reporters there for, in the sense of what it sparks from the players participating in it, right? Yeah. If your whole thing is competition and pressure, right? Like that is because every single one of those guys knows that
it's on social media, and people definitely have a reason to take when they see one drill in a highlight on our YouTube channel or on Twitter, which, by the way, like, please comment away. let us know what you think about Kyron Hudson or Elliot Washington, for sure.
But it's also not revealing anything, right? You're not giving away the game plan by literally putting your best cornerback against your best receiver and having your best quarterback throw a pass to them, right? That is not the game plan. And so if I don't know, this isn't a critique, but there is an opportunity there, I think, for Penn State football. And again, like you guys said, they have expanded access a little bit. But yeah, that's one where to me, that makes a lot of sense to actually want reporters to be there to see that portion of practice.
And I think, Nate, going back a year, like that is something that we really could have used that insight, because you had some stuff after the movement, the spring movement with Keandre and things like that a lot of those lasting impressions that we got of some of those guys came from that competition period. And I think that that's very important when you're talking about filling out a depth chart. Filling out a 2-deep is not so much about, like, I don't want to say it's not so much the most talented, but it's the guys that can filter through all that stuff and really get where they need to be from a mental aspect of it. I keep going back to consistency for that receiver position, because it's I don't want to say obvious, but like it's the right answer. Like someone asked on the board this morning, is like, what are the special things? What are the specific, traits that these receivers have to get? And I think T. Frank, you wrote the story on the freshman receivers that they have to get better. And it's not, I don't think it's ever one thing. And really you keep going back to what these guys can do with the potential that they have with Otten's, with Matthew Otten's physical freak potential, but does he know how to play wide receiver? I don't know. Kobe Howard knows how to play wide receiver. Does he jump that bridge to an eventual green light or something of that nature? So I think that's really what you're taking a look at. And then you kind of get to the end of spring. If you're Penn State, you take a look at your cards, you shuffle them back up, and you figure, how do you get the next batch of juice out of these guys? Like it's always about the next step with these guys, because they're so far, I don't want to say so far behind their peers, but you look at Ohio State, you look at the teams they're trying to compete with. Excuse me, I just completely lost my word. But you look at those groups, those peer groups in your top 4, top 8, top 12, whatever it may be nationally, and it's obviously lacking there. So it's just little by little, how do you make up that ground?
What are the defining, in a negative way, what are the defining passes last year of the Penn State football season? Like off the top of your head, right?
The ender. I'm sorry. You asked a question, and I have this tip where I was the dude that raised my hand in every class whatsoever.
T. Frank, you go.
Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Huge nerd. So end of the season, the interception to Amari Evans, and then the interception in the Big Ten championship game to throw to Trey Wallace. I'd say those are the two defining.
The Ohio State halftime interception.
Correct.
Yes.
What is the commonality between all three of those plays?
Oh, the receiver didn't fight for the ball.
Boom.
For the most part.
That's it.
Or
And
lost
it's
the fight
It's worth
for
noting
the ball.
the good ones too.
Lost the fight.
USC fourth down throws, terrific. There's a bunch that stick in the mind as well. But we live on the internet, so this is where we're going to go.
If I just again, it feels like part of this conversation has to have a foundational element where everyone understands that we're all talking about a place that is excellent, right?
Yeah.
Like Penn State football is excellent. This is a very, very good football program with a very solid standards of success. But if you like the point of all of this, and this has been a steady trajectory, is all right. How do you go from 2022 to 2023? What are the areas that need to get better? 23 to 24, right? Well, now the last gap is 3 spots.
Yeah.
Right? Like you only need to be better than 3 more teams. And how do you get there is by reversing the outcome of those specific plays.
And so I want to, something that I've been working through and kind of talking about, and I've written this before, I think, talking about Drew Aller. When I'm looking at you watch the film and then you kind of look at the data, the defining things that you see. And it's maddening because the passing game last year was good. Like you look at you have to really slice down into like pretty unfair, narrow margins to find like, okay, so this didn't really work last year. But on the whole, it was one of the most explosive passing attacks in the country by a number of explosive plays. It was one of the most efficient in the country in terms of those things. In 2-minute drills, Drew Aller was excellent. And like this is then referring to the receiver position. The areas where they seem to lack are those big, like when I filter these things down to the granular level, it comes back to me of like, oh, well, they're missing a big time wide receiver. So these particular plays aren't showing up in the game because their number one receiver was 260 pounds and he's not running 40 yards down the field wide the hell open. So like you look at that, as you mentioned, the top 3 teams are the teams that were ahead of them in the Big Ten. Those quarterbacks had those receivers and made those plays. So in the end, when I try to like write or talk about these things, it comes out as, well, the obvious thing is obvious. The receiver position struggled to be big time last year, and the quarterback struggled to be big time. And like that chicken or egg situation, I mean, the heat falls on all of them, but it's just like there is no real like defining obvious insight beyond, are they ever going to find the guy in the offense?
They're still really good.
That was what the point I was trying to make. That was the point. Yeah, they were still.
They're just not the best, and that's what everybody wants, including them. They're right. Every single person on that team right now is fighting to take that stride and become the best. But I don't know. Is Jeremiah Smith this like fully formed product at Ohio State? Right? Did he arrive as a fully right? Is he just a freak who is that much better than all of humanity? And the answer might be yes. Yeah. Right? Like the answer might be yes. But I think the more of that, like there are multiple ways to skin a cat. Absolutely. And Penn State demonstrated that last season by having a tight end who was the central tenet of the offense. Yeah. Right. However, if there is a margin to bridge, that's it.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about this now. So I was going to save this if we had time for it at the end of the show, but let's just talk about that receiver conversation, because I thought there was a very different tone from James Franklin and from Marcus Hagans last week, where James Franklin starts off saying, nobody cares that Tysier Denmark, because he was asked specifically about Tysier Denmark. Nobody cares that he's a redshirt freshman. Is what it was. That was the comment. Like he's got to produce. We need him. Marcus Hagans said everyone's time is right now. Everyone's ass needs to be on fire. So normally when we talk to James Franklin and we ask these questions about Nick Dawkins, 6 years into his career, finally is like a leader of the team, starting center, et cetera, et cetera. One of his favorite things to say is everyone has their own timeline to develop at their own pace. Except now it feels like the receivers are having a different conversation. Nate, you already pointed this out earlier. Penn State is now like not protecting these players from like obvious losses in one-on-one situations where it's then public in spring practice. Is there a shift in the I don't want to say the plan, but in the context around this particular position this spring? Or is that something where it's, Tysier Denmark is the individual we're talking about, and that's the person we're talking about in terms of his timeline should be now because it can be?
I don't know. What's interesting to me is Omari and Trey were protected to a certain extent.
Yes.
I do think that they were handled as carefully as Penn State could have in terms of the public narrative around them. And they left anyway. Right? And they left because of it. They left because they were tired of being the weak link, right? The public weak link, the one that the guys that everybody was talking about. And I don't think that was Penn State's fault at all. I don't think that was the program's fault at all. I think that in every sense, the people in and around the program took every step that they possibly could, including James Franklin, including Marcus Hagans, to present them as getting better and showing encouraging things. I mean, the things that James Franklin said in December, leading into the playoff about those guys was like almost over the top of
it was. Yeah.
You're not what I'm not good at this, but I have eyes and I'm not seeing what you're saying, but that's okay. That happens sometimes. So their encouragement over those things, it didn't keep them. And so there might be a little bit of an element of this of, hey, this one approach is one of being delicate and trying to handle them and manage the room and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Every single one of those guys, Keandre, Trey, and Omari, all bailed for not being praised enough, not being given the kudos or the flowers that they thought they deserved. Yeah. Well, maybe now it's time for Penn State to say, we're done with that. We're done with that. Yeah. You, Tysier, you want to be this? Like, this is who you have to be. And who you have to be, this is broken record territory, but it's not about how flashy your best plays are. It is how many out of 10 are you making the play?
Yeah.
Right? Is it 8? Is it 5? Is it 3? It needs to be 8. So that's the whole catch is with every single one of these guys, including the transfers, is how much of that consistent part can you deliver? Because people get so upset about Liam Clifford, but do you know what everybody talks about with Liam Clifford? It's exactly who he is every single day he comes into that building.
Yep. Fitz, first off, what do you think of the conversation so far? And then how do you see, I guess, I know we talked about this. I wrote about this. This was released today. The freshman receiver part of this conversation, because if everybody's ass should be on fire, that means everybody. Now, the expectations are different for individual players who don't have the physical skills to do this, but we do have the conversation of there are certain guys that have the physical skills to do this that are freshmen. So I guess, do you agree with the rephrasing of this, and how do you then view and fold in those young guys into the conversation?
Yeah, I agree with what Nate said about the room as a whole in terms of like they protected him. And then you look at the sort of blow off after the Orange Bowl, and it's like, well, that didn't work at all. So you know what? Just drop the hatch out. Like, forget about it. We're going to try something new. They go out, they get 2 guys from the portal. And like this time last year, if that was the situation, would they have admitted that they're still looking in the portal in the spring? I don't think so, because they were so worried about the delicate nature of everybody in that room. And now it's like, you know what? If you're not good enough, just we're not wasting time. You're not wasting our time. We're not wasting your time, etc. Yeah. If you want to go elsewhere, go for it. We're going to have to scratch and claw our way back to the level that is acceptable, and then try to get beyond that. So like that's kind of where I'm at with that. Is like you felt that, you're sort of tiptoeing around it over the last year, maybe even 2 years, And now it's just like, all right, just barge through the door, call it what it is. It's not good enough. It's not gonna change with this current outlook that you have. And then all of a sudden, you maybe start to see some strides. Maybe you start to see some, only the strong survive type stuff, whatever cliches we can work into this. T-Frank, I'll let you workshop that, but that's kind of where I fall with that. And the freshmen are part of that. The freshmen have come in, they've done a job where they can sort of vault themselves into the competition. It's not a situation where you're, just climbing onto the bottom rung and knocking that guy off. You're vaulting a couple spaces up. If you're Kobe Howard that came in with the intention of playing, like there's something to be said for guys that come in with the expectation of, hey, yeah, I'm probably going to redshirt. Well, this guy did not do that. So I think that's encouraging to see whether or not he's, this is the next distinction. I said this on the board this morning, but is he good for a freshman or is he good? Like that is the go ahead.
Yeah. So that's where I've been kind of battling in my mind of, you have Amari Evans was treated differently as a player than a lot of guys on the roster because they needed him, right? So they were so deficit in speed that they put him out there as a freshman, and he had never played receiver until the spring, really. Like if you go back and watch his high school film, he was a wildcat quarterback that didn't really like pass the ball all that much. He was almost just a positionless athlete, but the need was so great that he became a guy that was on the field, and he was on the field for 3 straight years in terms of like burning his red shirt, all those things, being a part of the program. But then there's this conversation of, you've got to be good enough. We have to trust you to be out there for almost every other position. Like there's a reason Cooper Cousins didn't start last year. Was he the best player? Not the best talent, the best player. That's always the conversation. And so the Marcus Hagan's outlined what Tysier Denmark needs to do in year 2 to be that guy, to take that step and be reliable, be the guy that James Franklin called him to be. And it's being good at football, understanding the fundamentals to the point that you're not thinking about them, and then actually then being able to attack a defense with intent and do all the things. So it's not one thing. Kobe Howard, Matt Otten, they have to do these things in less than a year, like 8 months between when they got to the program and the first game for them to see the football field. Can they do those things? That's the biggest question. And I don't know if they're going to be given, I don't know which path is going to happen. Is it going to be we need these guys on the field, so we'll allow some mental lapses? Or is it going to be the standard is the standard and veterans are going to play because they're going to be the guys that know what they're doing? I don't know how they're going to treat that in this new kind of context that they have around the position.
This is probably as close to a blank slate as they've had for a while, just because you look at all the new faces they're in, whether they're freshmen, whether they're transfers and things like that. And last year, you pretty much knew what you were getting with Trey Wallace as your number 1. They earmarked Liam Clifford as number 2. They brought in Julian Fleming from the portal as number 3. And then Omar, you kind of just wipe all that away. And now you're not really relying. And hey, Liam Clifford may be starting in the slot on August 30th. Absolutely. But like the competition is going to eat into that, to the sense that you've got 6 guys now instead of 4. And are those 6 guys better than the 4 you had last year? I don't know. Like that's still a determination to be made, but you have the opportunity to sort of get in there, and September helps with the schedule, but you have the opportunity to get in there and make plays. Where it differs for me is like, I don't see them in a position where they're prying Clifford or Caden Saunders in there, guys that have been in there before, to fill out a role that you think they can do. And you've seen that, maybe there's a cap on what they can do. So I think that's the bigger change this year. Hudson comes in, gives you maybe a little bit like of a different probably gives you what you were hoping to get in Fleming. But we'll see what happens with Ross. Ross is playing the outside, inside, whatever he wants to do. Things change in that outlook. And I think Andy Kotelnicki is a big part of it. Like we talk about where Penn State needs to boost itself at receiver, but it's receiver, it's quarterback, and it's play calling. Like it's everything that goes into it. And there we go again with that phrase. It's everything. The spacing last year did some of those receivers a disservice. And of course, they didn't get open, but a lot of that is natural sort of logjam stuff in the secondary when you're running routes that are close to each other to shake off and get your tight end open, basically. Yep. So now with a different outlook, with a different schematic approach with Khalil Dinkins and Luke Reynolds as compared to Tyler Warren, I think that opens up some things. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do with it, because I think there's potential in what they can do with it. I still think there's a cap on, how talented that group is, but how talented do you need that group to be if your running game works, if your offensive line is where it needs to be? Like, it's all gonna, I think you're more about bringing up that line instead of trying to equal that line going across. So
yeah,
I'm excited to see what happens there. I'm excited to see what happens with the freshmen, just because they have the opportunity. I'm going to lump Tyseer Denmark in there as well. But yeah, you've got seeds for change. I don't know that they'll grow, but you've got seeds for change that work with that. And there's a bunch of young guys that go into that.
We're going to take a quick break from this conversation. Nate, I hope we can get you back by the end of the show. As always, I have done a masterful job looking at the clock. We need to get to Fitz's recruiting update. And then if we have time at the end of the show, I want to get to the house settlement. So we'll be back with Fitz or with Nate in just 1 second. Now we got to get to Fitz's recruiting update. No commitments, but a lot of positive news coming out of this weekend for Penn State football recruiting, because spring football practices and just spring football in general means the opportunity to host these players on campus that you want to add to the class of 26 and beyond. So, of course, Fitz is here to give us the latest on what Blue White Illustrated has learned this weekend. And as we said, you should check out Inside Lash. That's Ryan Snyder's piece that came out on Monday about the information. We're going to give you some of the highlights of that, and then what Fitz has learned on his own as well. Give you some of the highlights here in Fitz's recruiting update. So where do you want to start when it comes to what you learned this weekend and what Blue White Illustrated learned this weekend from recruiting?
I'm still learning this weekend, because when I go fishing, I go out off the grid. Like, there's no cell service where I'm at, and it's terrifying to the brain, but also once you get into it, you're fine with it. So I got back in by reading Ryan Snyder's Inside Lash. There's a bit that I missed, a good bit that I missed, including some visitors that popped up on campus that, we I don't think had confirmed going into the weekend, but the guys that we knew about coming in. I think linebackers is a pretty important target, or pretty important couple of targets there. Nick Abrams was back in town. Of course, he's from McDonough. He's got a terrific top 5. I think he's going to take that thing to the summer, take official visits, and then go from there. But Penn State's going to be in that one until the end. And then Matthew Canoe. I had a pick in for Matthew Canoe from Virginia coming into the weekend. Steve Wilfong, who helped us out with a recruiting notebook of his own this weekend, was really, really awesome for him to do that. But he put a pick in for Penn State. More of your traditional box Mike type guy. We've been talking about him for a while now, and is a guy that keeps coming back to campus and keeps being excited by what he sees every time he comes back to campus. So I think that's a good harbinger of Canoe. I don't think he makes a decision before official visits, but certainly the possibility remains there. So a couple of linebackers, pretty good linebackers in town over the weekend. A guy from down south we've talked about quite a bit, Garrett Witherington, made it to campus for what is scheduled to be his first of 2 trips to Penn State. He's got an official visit set up for the summer as well. Very encouraged by the feedback, very encouraged by sort of what he's looking for. And you take a look across the board at guys that sort of go out of their way to look for the little things. And I think Witherington is in that mold. He plays at the end. He plays end in high school. He's probably going to be a defensive tackle at the next level, but he's up there 6'4", 6'5". So you look at what Penn State has done at defensive tackle, and they're kind of all over the board with sizes. You look back to 2 classes ago where Xavier Gilliam's 6'1", and Liam Andrews is 6'4", and DeAndre Cook's 6'3" or 6'4", and you're kind of all over the place. T.A. Cunningham was 6'6", and that one didn't work out, obviously. But then you go out and you look on the field, and they're kind of all over the place there too. Ty Blanding and Zane Durant, not the tallest guys at all. They've gotten away from some of those bigger guys, and some of those bigger guys are harder to find. And as we've mentioned before, it usually depends on what's available in the region. But if you can go out and get a 6'4", 6'5" guy that can plug the middle, those tend to help. I'm not a complete football expert, but those guys tend to help if you're looking to do that. So Garrett Witherington, just a name that we're going to continue to hear for a while. I'll be interested to see which direction his recruitment takes, but he's going to come back to Penn State for an official visit this summer. I think Penn State's right in the mix. So encouraged by those guys. A bunch more is in Inside Lash, a bunch more in that Steve Wilfong notebook. I will say Tuesday, sneaky big day for visitors coming in for practice. Who wouldn't want to be in State College on a Tuesday in April, when it's windy and 30 degrees out or whatever it is. But, a couple of guys from out of out of the region. Jake Krull from IMG Academy, set to be up this week. Brian Bonner from California was running back target of Jaywan Sider, and he carried over his interest to meet Stan Drayton. So he's going to meet Stan Drayton for the first time today. So it's a pretty big week. It's going to set up another big weekend of visitors, and definitely follow us along follow along with us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, because it just seems like every day there's a new visitor, every day there's a new update, or multiple new updates. So kudos to Ryan and Steve for holding it down this weekend. Some really, really good stuff on the site. I encourage you to check it out. And finally, Keemon Spell, the 2027 running back commit, invited to the Navy All-American game, which is pretty impressive for a running back a couple of years out. So he was down at OT7 this weekend, had a good weekend. So certainly one of the more talented guys that Penn State's had on the commitment list for a long, long time. So just a lot of encouraging stuff all around. Again, check more on the site, check more, ask Ryan questions, and he'll be on Thursday to talk more about what he saw and what he heard, because it's some good stuff. His inside lash is really, really good.
Yeah, they've been really good the last couple of weeks in terms of nutrient dense information and the ability to get you, I think, the insight that's important from the visits, not just the name of the visitor, but what is the context around that. And so I guess the last thing I'll ask you, and this is a question that comes up periodically. I haven't asked you guys this recently, so I just want to throw this one out here. Are you optimistic Penn State will get a commitment in the spring? Do you think there will be some around the blue-white game? Where's the positive momentum that I seem to be sensing from all this information? Do you think that's leading towards a good news where I'm sitting here with you or with Ryan on a breaking news video talking about the latest Nittany Lions?
Yeah, I do. I think you got to keep the expectations in check, because we are 2 months away, or not even 2 months away. It's actually it's official visit season right now. You can take official visits in April. It's just most schools decide not to do that, because why would you, sort of blow your weekend early, and then unless you think you can get them in the boat right away. So I think Penn State's first official visitor is Brandon Arrington, 5-star cornerback from California, in early May, and then take a couple of weeks off. The weekend of all 22 Elite 11 in State College is May 18th. So they're going to have official visitors then, take another week off, and then get to the actual meat of what we're used to with official visits, which is every weekend lining up 10, 15 guys, whatever it may be. So I think, yes, I do think Penn State will get a commitment before sort of traditional official visit season, or maybe a couple of those guys will come through. But it's not going to be the flurry that I don't think it's going to be the flurry that you're probably thinking with all the momentum here. And again, you're looking at a situation here where Penn State was sort of in the freezer in terms of visits because of the calendar, because of the way that they started spring practice so late. And now all of a sudden you're getting 4 and 5-star guys that are on campus. And, Ryan had a 5-star tidbit in the inside lash this week as well, where you just all of a sudden, all these guys are showing up just like they showed up to Ohio State in mid-March, just like they showed up at Notre Dame or Michigan or Clemson or something like that. So you're starting to see the backward rollout of this late schedule. Now all of a sudden these guys are getting on campus. And I think that's what really makes it more palatable. This going through because let's face it, we had nothing for the first 3 weeks of March.
Especially with like Caden Gebhardt committing to Clemson, kind of like it felt like there was a big dip, because it wasn't just that there weren't any visits, but some targets were really going elsewhere. So I think,
and it's usually never as bad as you make it out to be, but like silence is the worst thing in this business, right? Like if you're not hearing anything, you just assume the worst. And that's kind of what we felt for the first 3 weeks of March, at least, on the board at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, which by the way, the message board at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, has gone up in the last couple of days. Just the interest, and people are buzzing about spring ball and about recruiting and stuff like that. So just definitely jump on board and feel free to post, because it's been noticeably more busy since football started. How about that?
And the best way to do that is to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We're running a contest right now on the YouTube channel, where if you subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel between now and the blue-white game, you are immediately eligible for a chance to win a year subscription to the site. But if you don't want to wait for that, if you don't want to wait to the blue-white game, you want to get this information right now and be the smartest guy in or girl in your friend base about Penn State football, just join us for $1 for the first week to try it all out, and then you'll be enrolled for a year after that if you want to continue. Okay, let's talk about the House settlement. Nate Bauer, he is back here to wrap things up and for us to go out and ride into the sunset on this Tuesday morning, because we need to get to the bigger picture stuff, and Nate is our big picture guy. So the House case is in its final days of deliberation in terms of the verdict, correct, Nate? And so yesterday was day one of deciding the outcome of all of this. Do I have that part of the initial facts correct?
They're setting the stage for, like, the judge has to approve it. I don't know the timeline. Like that,
Okay.
like it was expected that she would have a decision yesterday. I
Yeah.
think she sent it back to the parties to hammer out some things that she thought are inequitable. And so if those two arrive at those pieces, then ultimately she will approve. It seems like the list of objections that she has are minimal. I think they're big issues.
Right.
That
specifics more than,
right. But she's not going to blow the deal up over these issues as long as there is movement toward the resolutions that I think she's seeking.
Okay, so what are the big takeaways for you yesterday? What's the important stuff we need to know? Because I have a good list. Sometimes I feel like I have a good list of questions for you of like, here's the things that I noticed.
Yeah.
What do I need to know? So
I think the first thing that is the most immediate in terms of its impact is really walk-ons. It's about roster size. This arbitrary number of 105, which James Franklin has pushed back on publicly as being not enough, right, to run college football. I think her point is, this is like they signed up for this and now you're implementing this and it's something totally different. And so it is again, equitable is the word, fair, to grandfather that part of the process. So guys who are already walk-ons on these teams really across the country don't have to get kicked to the curb, for lack of a better word, right? Phrase is because that's happened. That's happened. Iowa, there are some other programs who have really just kind of said, hey, listen, there's not a future role for you in this program based on what the future holds. What it was almost preemptive.
It was easier to do with some places when you're tenured for 11 years as a head coach and you got these guys in your program for 4 and 5 years. Like that's a different than Rich Rodriguez going to West Virginia and being like, sorry guys, it's not going to work out. Like there's levels here and that's what really sucks, right? Like the guys that have been doing it for, you look at the Penn State's offensive line room and they've got guys that are, have played in games, have made travel squads, have been here for 3 and 4 years, and they're never going to start, but they're an important cog in what Penn State's trying to do. So that's the part that gets me. And this is just a hot button issue because it affects so many people that, don't get the headlines and try so hard and, just make the same effort that the guys that do get the headlines get. It's just, they're not as talented. That's what it's about. But also practice squads, special teams, just all these different things that you don't really think about when you're talking about adopting the NFL model. Like you go, so last year you have 105 guys and then Zariah Fisher gets hurt for the year. Now you have 104 guys. You can't sign an extra guy. You can't do any of that stuff. And I think that's what they're looking at here is like, there's a ton of value in having these guys around, not necessarily for the 60 minutes on Saturday. And I think that's kind of what we're losing sight of. And yes, does there need to be regulation on it? I think there does. But at the same time, you're really looking at a situation where you're cutting out the underbelly of what has been so good about this game, right? Like you take all the walk-ons that you've had, you take all the experiences that you had, you go to these guys 20 years after they're done playing, and it doesn't matter if their teammate was a walk-on or a scholarship, they know them as a friend and they know them as a teammate. Like it's not the line that you draw where they're trying to draw the sharp line at the 105.
So aside from the walk-ons and potentially life for that, at least in this upcoming year, it feels like there are some other bigger, stickier issues that aren't going to be solved here in terms of there's not going to be a collective bargaining agreement because that's not part of the structure. Ross Dellinger tweeted this out and you highlighted this in your article. Can you explain what he's talking about when he said there's a 10-year deal? It feels like that players are going to be locked into a 10-year deal with this settlement. I apologize because if you don't know, but that seemed like it felt like that could be a bait and switch in terms of what the NCAA was trying to get out of this, of like, okay, great, concessions, but then we're going to have this for 10 years. So what was the context of that?
Yeah, it is a frame. Like, the NCAA needs to know what the ground rules are. You can't exclude that from this part of the conversation. They don't want this to be a short-term, just quick fix that, like, they just went through all of this stuff. And again, like you said, made these concessions. We'll institute them for a duration of time. That is their argument.
Okay.
I don't.
So they can make rules that won't then be sued and litigated against because there will be precedent in this case.
But as opposed to the judge effectively saying, and them even saying, oh, but other people can sue in the future. And that's kind of the problem, is you're creating a settlement on behalf of people who are, right, if this is a 10-year window, then they're currently in third grade. Right? Like, that doesn't necessarily work, even though they're arguing that it does. One of the things that stood out to me yesterday was the judge saying, effectively, that you need collective bargaining, right? There needs to be a union. There needs to be sides to this. Right. And that is ultimately where this should go. But she said she can't decide on those things. She can only decide on what's being put in front of her, which is, this proposed system, really, of what college football should look like in the future. I think that it's going to pass, and then I think that it will get blown up very quickly, because
that's what I was thinking.
if there is anything out, like, just reading the tea leaves, seeing what else is happening outside of this sphere, it's that people are ready to challenge or are already challenging what those proposals are. And that includes Livy Dunn talking about back payment, right, of her NIL value. There's just a whole host of things that at its core, and I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I am simply observing this the way that everybody else is observing this. I saw a 9-0 Supreme Court decision saying that you can't cap the ability of college student athletes to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, right? Yeah. To earn.
Yeah.
How does a $20.5 million salary cap work? Like, how do those two things align? It seems to be in direct contradiction to me. So we'll see. But certainly it does seem like she is prepared to approve this if that 10-year window is resolved in some way that's equitable, and the deal on grandfathering, what are effectively walk-ons. Because the thing, like, scholarships are going to get blown up. All of this is going back to, and it's funny because this is a relevant current thing. The things that college coaches advocate for and want for their players to be provided, right? The perks of being a college basketball, college football player. These college athletes are now making $100,000 on the low end annually. Mm-hmm. Like, they can buy it themselves, right? Like your housing, your scholarship, like all of those things. Yeah, you can pay for that with your $1 million salary, right? With your $800,000 salary. So, it's just a transformed outlook on what the landscape of college athletics is going to be. And it'll be interesting to see what the future holds in the immediate.
It just feels like every time we open up this box, or we try to put this thing in a box, you open it up and there's another box inside the box, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and also wider and wider and wider. And there's no end to this particular conversation because there's no structure to any of this that makes sense in our current culture and our legal system or any of these things. So it's going to be fun to see how this all plays out. Nate, final thought here. We do got to get going.
Sorry, I'll quit after this. They like, college athletics, the institutions that are involved in this member organization of the NCAA, they want structure. They want to pay players. They want to do all of these things. They just also don't want to call student athletes employees. And that's the rub of all of this. The collective bargaining agreement, all of those things are attached to a fundamental change in worker status of what everybody knows it to be. I just saw a thing with Gino Auriemma this morning, and he's like, we got to stop talking about this as though it's something that it's not. This is a professional arena where everything is handled professionally. Why this pretend the NCAA year after year after year, decade after decade, as things slip away, this idea of amateurism has slipped away. All right, well, now it's still, there's always something that they're trying to keep hold of to not have this tectonic shift, but it's going away. It will leave eventually. So at some point, they're going to have to get used to that.
Well, in the interim, Penn State practice coming up tonight. Follow along at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We'll have highlights here throughout the week. Of course, we'll have James Franklin's press conference later tonight here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. But most importantly, we will have updates for you during and after practice of what we see, what we observe, which has been significant. It's been important. Spring practice, we're getting some of the good stuff, and we're going to share it with you tonight at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr for Sean Fitz and Nate Bauer. We will talk to you then.